Greetings, YouTube. Let's talk about superhero demographics. Specifically, how many heroes are there in your world? I think I saw this on a thread on a forum, but I'm not positive. Sometimes things just kind of drift into my head from who knows where. And I remember one person commented that for them, the right number was 1 in a million. And in the United States, we have approximately 330 million people, which means there would be 330 supers or metahumans in the United States. I think that number may be a little low for my tastes, but I can understand the justification for it. If you look at comic books, yes, over the course of 70 years of comic book history, there have been, or 80 years at this point, there have been lots of heroes. I mean, there's something like 2,000 named characters with some kind of backstory and ability or some connection to some kind of super organization in the Marvel Universe. So they have a rich library from which to draw from. But let's just face it, how many do you need to run a good campaign? 100? Maybe 200? So maybe 330 is the correct number. But then again, most campaigns take place in a city. They're defending LA, or they're defending Metropolis, or Gotham, or New York, or what have you, or Bayonne, New Jersey. But the point is that they're usually located in one place. And so the pool of heroes, or metahumans, heroes and villains, may be around 200, but that's just in that locale. So what does that say for the overall number of heroes throughout the country itself? So I personally think 330 is a little low. Now, I think it would be interesting if you had a campaign where there was like 330,000. The thing is, most of them are very low powered. If you're going to look at the Mutants and Mastermind system, and they have a power level range that normally runs from 1 to 10. There are heroes and villains above 10, but they're the real heavy hitters. They're the Omega class heroes. They're not all that common. So there may be only 25 or 30 of those in the entire world, or at least the entire setting. Because let's face it, most superhero storylines take place in the U.S. Yeah, so it is. So I think that's a good number, but most of those would be in the power range between like 1 and 4. So we're talking ones that are just getting into the pulp range. They may have a number of small, really low powers or one decent power. And many of them may not even know that they are metahumans. If you've got like unbreakable bones and you're immune to disease, you may never notice that you are a super. Being a metahuman may be not something that you were ever aware of, simply because you don't break bones and you don't get sick. There are people who very rarely get sick and never break bones. I mean, I didn't break bones until 2000, I think it was, when I got in a car accident. 2000, 2001, 2000 I think it was. I got in a car accident. So I was born in '64, so that was a long stretch where I had never broken a bone. So there are people who never break bones in their entire lives. I'll give you one hint though: don't get in a trampoline with 3 other people. My wife tried that. That didn't end well for her ankle. So there may be things like powers like that, or they're just lucky, but it's a low level kind of luck. It's not Domino from the Deadpool film level of luck. I mean, obviously she's from the Marvel Comics, but that's the latest iteration of her. Then you'd have a smaller percentage of the heroes. So that could be 300,000 of the heroes are all these little low ones. Then you got ones that are running in like the 5 to 7 power level range, and there's more of them, and they're the real kind of heroes that we start talking about, and we think about heroes, superheroes, and supervillains. Then you get into the 8s and 9s, and then you get into the 10s, which there's maybe only like 30 or 40 of those in your entire campaign, and then there may be only like 2 or 3 or 4 Omega ones in that campaign, even though the world itself may have more. I think that's a decent number, but I kind of like the idea of there being a lot of unusual people in the world. Because not only do I think that the heroes themselves are important to the campaign, and it can create an interesting background. Look at Metropolitan, the comic, where it's a city where all the supers live, and you could have all the supers living in one place simply to contain the chaos. That's an interesting idea, particularly if your world is not just science fiction style metahuman. So Marvel is very science fiction metahuman. There isn't a lot of magic in the Marvel universe. There is some, as opposed to the more magical DC universe, which is far more mystical than it is science fiction. So there you have a nice blend in a place where they all come together. But even if they're spread out everywhere, and it's a mix of mystical and metahuman, of science fiction metahumans, I like that idea because for me, heroes, particularly like the Marvel X-Men style, the mutants, they have always represented the LGBTQ community. Because most Marvel mutants are ghost mutants in the sense that they don't look like mutants. Dr. Xavier doesn't look like one. Wolverine doesn't look like one. Jean Grey doesn't look like one. You get the point. They just don't look like they have superpowers. Now, some people do. Angel, Nightcrawler, things like that. They definitely do not. Mystique, they definitely do not look normal, human, average person in their natural form. Obviously, Mystique can look like anybody she wants to. But I was baffled in one of the movies how she changed her mass. She became a dwarf. That confused me. Maybe she was very dense for a very short period of time. Who knows? I've always seen them as representing that minority group. And having them interspersed with all the rest of us makes perfect sense. Because gay people and trans people are everywhere. They're your neighbors, they're your friends, they're your loved ones, they're your coworkers. And sometimes you don't even know. And I like that. So you may want, instead of 330,000 metahumans, most of them being low powered, maybe you want 3.3 million heroes with them all being low powered. You could still potentially cram them all into one city if you wanted to. Of course, that requires some kind of testing and, registration act, which I'm definitely opposed to. But maybe they just begin to conglomerate in different areas. Like there's San Francisco was the gay capital of America. Maybe a city becomes the point where all the supers and all the metahumans tend to conglomerate. But it also means that's where all the supervillains are going to be. Because what's a supervillain without a good superhero to come up against and smack each other around repeatedly for no apparent good reason, as opposed to actually changing the world for the better. Okay, I'm sorry, getting a little existential there. But I like the idea of there being a lot of supers. But I do understand why there are people who want very few. Now, there was a comic out there where it was a game, I think, where there was a set number of heroes, flat out. That's how many there were, and that can be intriguing because as the number went down, the power levels went up because they were all essentially pulling off the same pool of energy. So knock one off, and the rest of the people get stronger. That's not going to end well for anybody, because somebody's going to want to have all the power. And eventually, there's going to be a couple of people that will. I liked how they did it in Hancock, which is still one of my favorite smaller budget superhero films, where you just have a world with two superheroes in it. That's it. There are two superheroes in the whole world, and Hancock is one of them. I think Will Smith did a really good job with that character. It was a lot of fun. But then you have things like Watchmen. There's one actual metahuman in Watchmen, and all the rest are just people. Some of them are very well trained and incredibly smart and very wealthy. Batman analogs. But there was only one that actually had powers. And he changed the world. He got America off fossil fuels for vehicles by creating a near limitless supply of lithium. He he could do many things. I still don't think that Moore really took Dr. Manhattan's potential to its logical conclusion. I could have done more with that, and if I were to be given Dr. Manhattan's powers, I would. The world would be a much different place when I'm finished. But this is a discussion about demographics. I've gotten off track. What a shock. So let's talk about how many supers you want in your campaign. Do you not care? Is it something that doesn't matter? Do you have a demographic number that's tied directly to plot? So if your plot requires there to be 10,000 in one session and the next time there are 400, that you just don't worry about it. That you just do what you got to do. Or the number changes over time. Because I'm sure that the actual demographics of like the ZC and the Marvel Universe very much are all over the place as far as it goes, because different writers will do different things. That's one of the reasons that superheroes are so inconsistent, because every time a new writer gets a hold of that hero, they have a much different idea of what that hero should do and their abilities and things like that. Not having a single dedicated team that takes that character from cradle to grave means you're going to get a lot of inconsistency, and over time it just creates this lexicon of canon that is just burdensome. But it does keep a lot of the true fans out there very busy keeping track of it, and maybe that means they're not bothering the rest of us. That's not a bad thing. So let's talk about superhero demographics. How many you like? How many you think is too many? Do you like a whole bunch of low-level ones, or do you just like to have ones that are of the more recognizable superheroes? And anyone out there who has not read Martin's Wildcard series, I very much recommend that. It's a shared world where superheroes arrive at the end of World War II because of a virus. And from that point forward is different from our timeline. And the world has a lot of heroes that are low-level powered, and some of them are jokers. They either have useless powers or detrimental powers. They're like just hideous mutants or some variety. They just don't fit into society. Then there are a few that are very much very unattractive or very unusual looking, but they do have some positives, so they call them Joker aces. Then you have the ones that have the real classic superhero powers, and they're the aces. And the aces rule the world as far as the political spectrum goes and the social spectrum. Great series, and there is a GURP supplement out for it. It's an older supplement, but there's also a Mutant and Mastermind supplement for that setting as well. And it gives you all the different heroes with all their stats up. Great reference. And I think that's for Mutants and Mastermind 3, if I'm not incorrect. Could be 2, but they're very close to each other. So let's talk about superheroes, how we like them, and how many there should be in the world.